Friends, we need to talk about the Game of Thrones ending. Wow, that show we were all watching, it sure did end, didn't it? Okay, but in all seriousness, now that the internet has died down a little bit and we've all gone home and licked our wounds, I just want to congratulate us all. We did it. We survived to the end of one of the biggest event television series. And while some of us were weirdly entitled with our petitions, none of us took to the streets and flipped cars and burned down houses. Already doing better than sports ball. And Daenerys. Spoilers? So I'm just gonna jump in now and give a big hearty yikes to Bran the Broken. Yikes! Oh, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been made king. Although I'm very curious about what the repercussions of that choice will be. It's more about the naming optics for me. As my good friend and other internet person Princess Weeks pointed out on Twitter.
Also, was Bran the All-Seeing or Bran the Keeper of Memory taken?
But hey, Game of Thrones has always looked to history for its inspiration, and for some monarchs, the cognomen tossed on them were kind of iffy. Anyway, here's my list of historical nicknames for kings that probably should have been sent back to the writer's room. This list is in no particular order, not at all complete, entirely ridiculous, and only for my amusement. Look, I'm trying to fill the gaping hole in my soul until the next book comes out, and I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, okay? Number 1. Ivalo the Cabbage. So this one gets me right in the Sir Davos feels. I love that Onion Knight. Now, he's a bit of a folk hero, but Ivalo lived in 13th century Bulgaria, which at that point was a part of the Byzantine Empire. Unfortunately, Bulgaria was getting invaded and raided by the Golden Horde at that point. But the Byzantines didn't care for Bulgaria at the time, so they just let the Golden Horde rape and pillage. So Ivalo, who was just some guy who probably raised pigs, he gets together a bunch of other peasants and fights the Golden Horde, defeating them. He then turns around, fights and kills Tsar Constantine I, and becomes Tsar himself, but only for like a year because nobody liked him. He then runs off to join the Mongols because he figured, well, at least they respect me, but then they ended up assassinating him anyway, so... Anyway, depending on the language, his nickname can either mean lettuce or radish or cabbage. But I'm sticking with the cabbage one because I love brassicas. I mean, who doesn't love a brassica? Okay, for those of you who don't like vegetables, and I'm really trying to not take that personally, brassica is a genus of plants in the mustard family. It's where we get everything delicious, like cauliflower and broccoli rabi and turnips and kale and collards and cabbages. Brassicas are proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. Anyway, I'm sure some would scoff at being compared to a leafy green delicious thing, but cabbages store well over the winter, and you can ferment them into delicious foodstuffs, and they're full of nutrients, and why is cabbage just so perfect? If anything, Ivalo has some work to do to catch up to the awesomeness that is the cabbage. Number 2, John Lackland. Now, Jon Snow might have it bad, what with the writers forcing him to kill off the woman he loved. Because of reasons. Terrible, stupid reasons. No, you guys, he had to do it. It had to be him. But at least he's not John Lackland. Oh, if that's not ringing any bells for you, but you're a Disney kid like me, you might know him better as, Prince John, the phony King of England. That's right, John Lackland was that Prince John, the Robin Hood Prince John, the Prince John we've all been taught was the worst. I could probably do a whole video about King John and the Angevin family. But I'm not, because I'd really rather not spend any more time on the Angevins than I have to. Anyway, the Angevins were like Arrested Development, only medieval. I don't know, I guess I should be inserting the Arrested Development theme here, but I really don't want to get a copyright strike, and I don't have a kazoo, so use your imaginations. Henry II had 5 legitimate sons by Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was absolutely Lucille Bluth by way of Circe and Lady Olenna. Now, Henry and Eleanor's first son, William, died tragically at the age of 3, which honestly was probably for the best. He got out of the family while the getting was good. Henry II had been running around frantic, collecting as much land as he could from western France and Wales and Ireland, so he had something to give each son as an inheritance. You know, like you do. Of course, Henry II was the kind of dad who would make jokes about how his youngest son, John, would probably not end up with any land, seeing as he was the youngest and he just didn't have enough to go around. And I thought I'd heard some bad dad jokes. That's a bad dad joke right there. Despite his attempts at humor, Henry II wasn't really a great dad, mainly because he wasn't dying fast enough. Henry the young king really wanted that sweet, sweet land inheritance so he can continue living in the style to which he was accustomed. And the only way to do that is by having land that you can then, tax a bunch of people who live there for and just live off their land and labor like a bloated tick. Monarchies! Henry the young king started the Great Revolt because Henry II gave the banana stand to his youngest son, John. And by banana stand, I mean like 3 castles. Eleanor of Aquitaine wasn't on great terms with her husband, so she sided with her eldest son in the revolt. Her 2 other sons, Richard and Geoffrey, not on good terms with Daddy either, also joined their brother's revolt, with a little help from the French king and his son. John the baby was now Daddy's favorite because he wasn't in open rebellion. Emphasis on open. Yeah, that's awkward. Daddy puts the Great Revolt down in 18 months and makes everyone promise to never do it again. Henry the young king dies of illness while breaking that promise, totally revolting against Daddykins, never actually getting the chance to be king himself. Geoffrey dies in a tournament, taking himself out of the running. But was he killed in a tournament, however? I mean, it would have been the only non-treason reason for him to be in France, schmoozing with the French king. Otherwise, it would have looked rather suspicious. What? Plotting to overthrow my father? With the French guy? What? Look, I just came here to joust and have a good time, and I honestly feel so attacked right now. So the French king convinces Richard I that no, but your father, John's his favorite. Look, he gave him Ireland as a present, and he's going to make John the king, and you should really do something about that one, Dickie. So Richard revolts against his father. Richard I, definitely a tool, just not the sharpest one in the shed. He defeats Henry II, who then goes and dies of an ulcer. Then again, if I had a family like Henry did, I'd probably do the same thing. Anyway, Richard becomes king, and he's the worst. The French king, definitely the smartest of the lot, plays the 2 brothers against each other. John revolts, but Richard forgives him. I mean, it's kind of par for the course at this point. And then Richard gets killed by his own men. Pro tip: don't point your crossbow at your king. John, the last brother standing, is king. Lackland this dad. He's a stickler for paperwork and for milking every last bit of tax he can from the lands he inherited, our John. Really into bureaucracy. Really not very popular. Really nasty temper. No, the French prefer his nephew, and John drops the ball in the French-Anglo War, losing practically all the French holdings he had. During his reign, he was also constantly fighting with the barons of England, which led to them forcing him to sign the Magna Carta, which, not the worst thing to happen in the history of kings. John dies of dysentery, having lost almost everything Daddy Dearest had collected over the years. And now he's known for being the petty, greedy, cowardly king from the Robin Hood stories, which is also kind of hilarious because really, of all the Angevin boys, he's the asshole? Really? Look, the Angevin family, total trash, every one of them. Throw them all out. Eleanor can stay. She was working with what she had. Anyway, King John pretty much burned down the banana stand. And by banana stand, I mean the Angevin Empire. Way to go, Lackland. Number 3, Ethelred the Unready. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh man, he totally showed up 15 minutes late with Starbucks, didn't he? Nope, it's actually an Old English pun. You see, unread means poorly advised, while his name Ethelred means well-advised. So you could say he was the well-advised, poorly advised. So he wasn't Ethelred the can't get his shit together, but instead Ethelred the please stop believing everything Fox News claims. This was the kind of guy who would have looked at Littlefinger and thought, yeah, I trust him. I mean, the man tried to bribe the Vikings to get them to leave them alone. Pro tip, if you give a Viking a large amount of money hoping they'll leave you alone, they're gonna come back to see what else you haven't given them. Poor Ethelred.
Number 4. Pedro Capacidonio.
Jumping to the 18th century, Capacidonia is the combination of the Portuguese capes for capable and indonia for indonious or appropriate, suitable even. He was a perfectly cromulent king, which was probably for the best because it was actually his wife Julia, who was his niece, who had the real claim to the throne and the actual authority. Pedro was just there, living his best life, really not interested in how the government was run. He was a all-right husband, seemed to support his wife's reign. He just wanted to spend his time hunting and doing some religious stuff. He was functionally useless, but otherwise fine. He was like Robert Baratheon, except, not. Number 5. Louis the Unavoidable. Now we're straddling the 18th and 19th centuries and ending our little journey in France. Look, after the 1790s, it was hard out here for a French king. Now, Louis spent most of his reign in exile because of a little thing I like to call the French Revolution, and because Napoleon happened. But when Napoleon was defeated, Louis was the unavoidable choice. Which, thanks. Geez, you people really know how to make a guy feel important. Now, Louis was also called the Desired, but I'll put good money on that was just what he wanted people to call him. Of course, Louis XVIII was the last French monarch to die while reigning, so you could say the fall of the House of Bourbon was unavoidable. That's what they should have called Bran. They should have called him Bran the Unavoidable. That's way better than Broken. There! I fixed it! You're welcome!
As ever, thank you to my earlenders, Avi Finkel, Johan Gustafsson, Mario B., Chandra, William Christopher, and Xanthid Pink. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you like what I'm doing here, be sure to check out my Patreon, link below, and my podcast, The Apocalypse Book Club, that you can find at pretty much wherever you can find podcasts. Until next time.
Richard was not the brightest fox in the Cracker Jacks. Huh. Real neon slapper there, Dad. You're such a little shit.